Okay, hello. Please note you'll need to change the slides that you are viewing yourself. I will tell you when to move on to the next slide. We will now move on to slide 2 and I will introduce myself. Hello, and thank you to Ufi for inviting me to be your presenter today, and to all of the attendees joining us today for this webinar, Strategic Data Management, How to Design and Maintain Your Exhibitor and Visitor Databases. My name is Mark Pritchard, and I work as a Senior Consultant for Ungerbuck Software International, and I have worked within the UK for many large exhibition venues and organisers for more than 15 years. We will now move to slide 3, which will detail the agenda for this webinar. Please feel free to ask any questions by entering your question into the message taskbar. So, on slide 3, today's agenda for this webinar will cover 4 main topics. The challenge of big data, so the pros and cons of having large amounts of data in your CRM system. Build your data management strategy, so understanding what data your organization really needs. Then we'll look at best practices for designing and maintaining your CRM system. So strategies that you can adopt for managing your data. Avoiding common pitfalls in CRM. Ways to avoid sometimes costly problems with data and strategic CRM versus purpose-built CRM data management solutions. And there will also be an opportunity at the end of the webinar for questions and answers. We'll now move on to slide 4. So, do you know about the 1-10-100 rule? So consider the 1-10-100 rule, which says, as a general rule, failure to take notice and correct your data mistakes escalates in cost in the later they are discovered. So it costs £1 or €1 to verify the accuracy of data at the point of entry, £10 to correct or clean up data in batch form, or even more, and £100 again or more per record if nothing is done. Including the costs associated with lower customer retention and general inefficiencies. In other words, a shared database eliminates the time and cost of rekeying and verifying information entered into separate, disconnected systems. A single database for CRM, exhibition management, and financials also eliminates costly and embarrassing mistakes that are created with disconnected systems. We'll now move on to slide 5. So let's have a look at the challenge of big data. We're now moving on to slide 6. So, how much is too much? The challenge of big data. Too much data. So the challenge of big data is too much data, finding and choosing the right data, and finding a good software solution. So there was a time when it was clear that gathering information also meant that you needed to put a limit on the number of accounts or the number of records you have in your system. When the archive room was full, this meant that you needed to do some cleanups. The problem is you accumulate data, but you usually don't use it for anything really. In fact, all the data that you gather over years actually has a cost. So remember, sometimes less is indeed more. When I say more in terms of quality. We'll now move on to slide 7. But The good news is you are not alone. Most companies nowadays have issues with managing their data. But the truth is, you cannot try and avoid the topic, because this issue may be common, but it has a cost. And the more you try to avoid having a real look into your data and start cleaning, the more impact on your revenue. And this will be high. Bad data usually comes from manual data entry, or maybe even imports of marketing lists or other external sources. So how bad can data hurt your company? So as you can see on the slides, we have some interesting information, some facts. So check out these facts and statistics, how poor quality or misunderstood data can cost your business. And it runs into millions and billions of dollars. So 92% of businesses feel that their contact data is inaccurate. Quite an interesting or very high statistic there, 92%. Bad data or poor data quality costs US businesses alone in the region of $600 billion annually. Poor data or lack of understanding of the data are cited as the #1 reasons for overrunning project costs. And in addition, poor data can cost businesses between 20 and 35% of their operating revenue. So this slide just really outlines some of the impacts, not just purely perceived costs, but actual costs within organizations in general and also associated with the events industry. We'll now move on to slide 8. So, where does bad data come from? And as you can see on the slide, there's a number of sources, if you like, in terms of bad data. And these can be applicable to your organization, business cards, imports of market lists, like I mentioned earlier, manual data entry, so maybe software solutions that don't really fit with your organization, integrations with other systems. So your core CRM system may be integrated or interface with data from other sources, maybe such as a finance system or a website system. So you can actually have sources from various other systems. Online information, so maybe data is being pulled from your web shop, and also any social media integration as well. So as you can see on this slide, all of this data has to be controlled and also managed within your CRM system. So I work for a company who has developed an integrated software for the event management industry. I was lucky enough to start at Ungerbuck as a consultant, implementing our software with many different customer types, doing very different types of business and having very different ways of working. Very often when you come to implement a new piece of software, you first start the project by having a look at your old data, which was stored in maybe your legacy system. And so very often management only realize the amount of incorrect and irrelevant data in the previous system when it's already too late. So you need to consider cleaning up instead of avoiding this task any further, because as I outlined earlier, it has a cost implication and an ongoing cost implication. You should take some time to analyze how data is collected. This could turn out to be one of the biggest time eaters tasks for your users, and you may be aware that this may not be a problem for you that you've already recognized. So the purpose of this webinar is to show you how to identify the issues with the way the data is collected, clean up the data, and define better processes to make sure data collection is efficient and is of high quality. We will now move on to slide number 9. So, having said that, what should be the goal? I just want to give you a quote here from a former Chief Executive Officer of Hewlett-Packard. And this particular quote resonates very well with me. The goal is to transform data into information, and information into insight. So the fact is that you cannot afford to have data of average quality. Understanding what you need from your data will lead to better insight and reporting, and therefore arm your senior management with the information, the insight, to make better, more informed management decisions. So across a number of the projects that I've implemented, I always consider the reverse engineering approach. So start with the insight or the KPIs, the key performance indicator reports that you need within your organization, and then move backwards, reverse engineer to understand what data you need in your core CRM system, rather than seeing what good data is left for reporting at the end of the implementation. So it sounds a very simple approach, but I would always strongly recommend this approach in terms of reverse engineering when you're considering any new software, in particular customer relationship management software. We'll now move on to slide 10. So moving on to the next topic of the agenda, build your data management strategy. So cleaning up a database is typically an overwhelming experience, and starting without a plan is going to lead to a much larger endeavor than is necessary. So before you even begin applying resources, tools, and money to data quality, first get a sense of what it means to your business. How important is it? So what data does your business need to progress from both a record and indeed an individual field perspective? What fields and records are critical to your business? Consider dashboards, reports, lists, views. So put yourself in the shoes of your colleagues. If possible, sit in on a sales meeting. Where are the representatives, the sales reps, the sales people struggling? What is the manager asking them about? Are they using Excel for their reporting? Take it, explore what they are looking at. Can you provision that information, that insight, in a dashboard? So, can you provision it in a dashboard? Sit down with your staff and get a sense of how they are measuring their business. How is your core business system or systems aligned to their requirements? For many, this exercise can only bring clarity to where efforts and resources need to be applied, but also it will provide some insight on your current systems. Are you tracking the right fields? Are the fields on the correct objects? Budget, authority, time frame, and need. Related fields are also commonly placed on or within the wrong fields. So spend some time in the life of your colleagues. This will allow you to quickly analyze the good and the bad about your data and the issues it is creating within your organization. I will now move on to slide 11. So, having said that, where do we start? Step 1, involve users from all departments. Additionally, take the time to communicate on goals and the big picture. So very often when we start discussing the import of old data into a new system, for instance, users want everything to be brought over. Yes, everything. If you talk to the users, they will always have a good reason to keep data. So when implementing a software like ours, such as Ungerbook, we need to be careful about the cost of importing everything into the new system. So be ready for some tough discussions within your organization. When we start talking about the costs for doing that, minds generally change. Commonly, we find that only 30 to 40% of the data is actually relevant and useful. So we consider this to be a worthwhile exercise. We'll now move on to slide 12. So for step 2, we need to identify your priorities. We need to decide where quality data is a must, define the new standards and document them, and finally set a realistic timeline. So in essence, what we're saying here is you need to define your data quality strategy. You need to know how bad your data is and the direct result, for instance, loss in time, use of workarounds to find information, use of other systems across multiple areas of your business. You need to define where quality data is a must for your organization. And you need to define the new standards for quality data and how you are going to measure quality of data in the future. So look at ways your company is using data to determine what levels of accuracy is appropriate and required. Realistically, most organizations are never going to have perfect data. Adopt a strategy to ensure that the data is of sufficient quality. Again, quality isn't absolute. It's in the eye of the beholder. So figure out how good your data needs to be within your organization, and then find somebody or people or departments to validate it. If the data is old, it's important to know how old it is and how quickly the relationship has changed with your customers. Look at different segments and the cycles of the relationship within each of these segments. For example, if you're running an airline, you would segment a leisure traveller who flies once per year and a consultant who flies twice per week to different locations and into separate categories to monitor the relationship. Looking at data going back 2 to 4 years for the leisure traveller and data from just the past year from the consultant will provide a good reflection of the business and the relationship. If information is missing, take a good look at 4 different types of data. And these are descriptive, transactional, social network, and attitudinal. And ask whether your relationship with your customers is likely to benefit significantly if you start capturing more or indeed better information. If you have descriptive and transactional data, chances are you have plenty of information to do a good job of relating to the customer. But you might get extra value by tapping into the customer's social network so that your company can do a better job of marketing to them as a group. On the formatting side, this means ensuring good company-wide training to make sure that everyone understands how this data can be used. Describe the data, describe what the data includes and excludes to avoid false assumptions being made about the quality of data you are dealing with. So a lot of detail there just to take on board, identifying your priorities. We'll now move on to slide 13. So I may have painted a difficult position, a difficult picture, but what can be your strategy to resolve this particular issue? So just on the slide here, on slide 13, I've just shown a very basic strategy for managing this, for managing any potential data strategy that you may want to implement. So step 1, the initial data cleanup, which I've touched on. So we go through data auditing, the cleanup, and then the second phase, which is maintenance and monitoring. So enforcing best practices within your organization. when we talk about best practices, that can mean best practices in terms of your data sources and also best practices in terms of your CRM system and your data entry by your users. And then it's a cyclical approach here around phase 2, which is your monitoring data quality. And this should be cyclical because it's an ongoing process. So monitoring data quality actually is a task of not just maybe administrator within your organization, but every user of your core systems, such as CRM. So what's going to be your strategy? This routine should be applied and implemented and maintained, and in most instances, having data at your disposal, like I mentioned earlier, is critical. So it needs to be a key or a major priority for your executive team or your executive board. That's how important managing your core data is. I'm now going to move on to slide 14. So moving on to the sort of next topic of this particular webinar, best practices for designing and maintaining your CRM system. So let's take a look at some best practices for maintaining your data in our CRM system. We're going to move on to slide 15. So, like I mentioned earlier, what you need to do is undertake a cleanup. So there's a need to improve the data you have before you even consider implementing a new CRM system. So on the slides, I've just mentioned some key areas that you need to consider as part of that cleanup. So we need to review all fields and record types. Review all data inputs and outputs. Again, this could be across multiple systems. They could be fully integrated systems or partially integrated systems. Identify any redundancy and remove or merge incorrect or duplicated data. So review all the fields in use. Organize workshops with the users or user to evaluate the relevance of each field and if it needs to be kept, if it can be merged with another record. Do you need the data to be kept somewhere? Do you need it for reporting purposes? How many people use this field? How many times is it accessed or used per year? So you need to start asking your business all of these types of questions. Remove data that is not required. I make it sound simple, but this will take time. The more systems, the more databases, the more chances of error. So you really need to set these rules in place. Slide 16. So based on my experience, both within the software industry and the events industry, I've noticed sort of 5 common mistakes when it comes to data cleansing. Lack of project ownership, very, very important. Like I mentioned earlier, these sorts of projects have a strategic importance within your organization. So you need to have that project governance. No specific goal set. Again, you need to set your timelines and goals, importantly. Poor communication to users. So when a project is initiated, you need to communicate the project and the reasons for that project, the brief, the ultimate goals, and the timeline for that project. You also need to understand and don't underestimate the amount of work that is needed. So many times, as part of an implementation of a CRM system, the amount of time and effort and resources that are needed to undertake this initial data clean and maintain your data management strategy is very often underestimated. Also, what I've seen is a lack of documentation. So that is both part of the end user training, but also as businesses change, core systems change. They are live business critical systems. So when your business change and your systems change, you obviously need to make sure any documentation, end user documentation, training documentation is also maintained. So this documentation should be live and should also have document owners. For me, very important. I'm now moving on to slide 17. So we need to define your single source of truth. And as the slide suggests, multiple information systems means data in different places in many instances. You need to review and improve existing integration. So maybe some are full integration in terms of maybe your CRM and your finance system or your SAP system, or some may be partial, as in a sort of semi-integration. So there may be a manual export and a manual import. We also need to reduce the need to log into different systems, because if you need to log into different systems, the chances are users won't. And therefore different systems will have different levels of accurate data. So you'll need to agree on a single point of truth system. The one system that is going to give you the account code, reference, or unique identifier to all of the systems. This should be clear to everyone. You also need to validate data coming to the main system and data sent from the main system. So as you can appreciate, there are of course significant benefits of a one single and integrated data source. Issues of rekeying and expensive interfaces across multiple systems, and sometimes and in most instances non-intelligent interfaces. These come with a high total cost of ownership issues. For example, if you're working with multiple systems, you obviously need to maintain upgrades and patches across all of those systems. You also need to maintain your management reporting out of different systems. So if you do have to work across different core systems, it comes with a whole suitcase of issues. So there are significant benefits of one or single and integrated data sources. I'm now moving on to slide 18. Train your users. So the best CRM software cannot work on its own. You need to make sure your users input the data that is required. Initial training is good, but retraining is a must. So we need to decide on normalization rules and best practices. Think about the actual time needed to enter data. Time it. You need to think of the working environment, the constraints. If certain data fields are not essential, this is time that can be saved during the data entry. More time to focus on those revenue-focused tasks for your sales team. You need to decide what to throw away. Don't forget, keeping data has a cost, like I mentioned earlier. Because of the size of the database, keeping data just in case from a cost point of view is not really a smart thing to do. The more data, the more hardware required, the more impact on the performance of your database or databases. You need to decide on how to maintain a clean database in the future. You need to define which data is getting outdated when. For instance, the address of a company is data that is remaining for a long period of time, whereas an email address or phone number is going to be outdated very, very fast. Are you collecting the data for a real purpose? Or is it more, maybe one day we'll use this data? You need to be honest with yourselves. Find an example of data and understand whether it can be realistically used within your organization. Training users. This does sound obvious, but trust me, in many projects, again, a little bit like the data clean, this is underestimated in terms of the amount of planning and resources needed to implement training for users. So you would never let a new driver in an example I'd like to give you, you would never let a new driver drive a car without driving lessons. So why would you let a new employee access your core business systems without being trained? Again, drawing on my professional experience, I've heard of event venues making new employments gain their CRM license. So they undertake this license in a test environment before they are able or permitted to access any production or live environments. For me, this makes total sense. Hopefully that's a good example for you. So I'm going to move on to slide 19 now. So there are some tools that can help you. And I've just mentioned 3 or 4 examples here. Address validation, phone number normalization, real-time versus batch, and build your own versus outsource. And I'll explain that a little bit more now. So consider using an address validation application and link it to your CRM tool to make data efficiency improvements and improve the quality of data through real-time validation. Most companies still value or still favor building their own data scrubbing tools because simple data validation is relatively easy to program and they can think simple data cleaning is all they need. But complex data validation isn't easy to program or anticipate. So high-end data quality tools offer much more. These suites, which vendors say typically take 2 to 5 days to implement, include both batch and real-time audits, repairs, record matching, and augmentation of additional data to records, such as geospatial data, worldwide postal code information, or new company affiliations or part information. Outsourcing the cleaning of data is a simple and effective way of getting that sales data in tip-top shape without the pain of having to do the organization yourself. Employ a professional organization to give you a full data audit and you'll be left with valid, deduplicated data on prospects and indeed customers that you are now ready to use. A company that specializes in cleaning this type of data will offer advice and assistance on keeping the data trail clean now and in the future. A member of staff should work with the company to determine performance metrics and outline objectives. Lead quality criteria should be established for each campaign, and this should guide the third-party experts as they use robust screening and validation methods to screen out outdated or dead or invalid leads. The cleaner, as in the external company, will advise you on your future management of leads in order to improve, to offer better improvements in terms of the way that you use them. Efficient data management will help you speed up the time it takes between lead generation and closing. It will also ensure that each lead is given 100% chance of success. Reducing the chance through poor record keeping is inexcusable, and like I've said, and I keep saying, will also cost you money. I'm now going to move on to slide 20. So don't forget the next checkup, as the slide suggests. So don't forget, it's not just a one-off task. There is no system out there that will allow you to control everything which is inputted into your systems, such as a CRM system. You will need to have humans reviewing the database on a regular basis. Deduplication functionalities can help, but this cannot yet replace human beings' understanding. You need to clean your data on a continuous basis. For instance, set a quarterly cleanup of the database. You can have manual controls, triggers, special programs to help. Also, cleaning CRM information is the perfect excuse to contact your old prospects and clients again. This can lead to re-established links with lapsed accounts, connecting new clients, and adding value by increasing the value of your present leads data. I'm now moving on to slide 21. So the next topic that I would like to discuss with you is avoiding common pitfalls in CRM. So we'll now focus on this common pitfalls and see how we can resolve this potentially in any current or future CRM relationship management, customer relationship management system that you're looking to implement. We'll move on to slide 22. So as the slide suggests, let's have a look at a fairly high level comparison between general purpose CRM versus purpose-built. When I say purpose-built, I mean purpose-built for the exhibition or events industry. So general purpose CRM is ideal for organizations that follow a traditional sales funnel. CRM purpose-built for exhibitions and events takes the unique sales process of events into account. So customer relationship management software is a set of tools and processes that organize, track, and manage customers through the entire life cycle. It also allows organizations to manage prospect information through the entire life cycle of the customer from prospect to sold. What general purpose CRM fails to address is the unique sales process of exhibitions and events. Selling and servicing exhibitors and sponsors, even members and attendees, require very, very different processes than companies selling widgets, for instance. So CRM purpose-built for exhibitions, conferences and events takes the unique cyclical nature of events into account and as a result complements the workflow within your organization to allow you to manage events that take place year after year after year. So as you can see, there is quite a difference between this general purpose CRM and this purpose-built CRM for the exhibition and events industry. I'll move on to slide 23. So avoiding common pitfalls in CRM. So although general purpose CRM, and hopefully this will answer your question, Tony. If not, we can address it at the end of the webinar. So avoiding common pitfalls in CRM. Although general purpose CRM products are well suited for organizations that sell products and services that follow a traditional sales funnel, they require extensive customization in most instances to make them event ready and able to handle all of the complex transactions that happen between you and the event organizer and their exhibitors and sponsors for a single event or across many events. In addition to increasing the implementation times and costs, in many instances, these customizations may also require an organization to change their workflows or their business processes to suit the software. For staff members resistant to change, this may result in lower than expected adoption and onboarding rates. As you may expect, a CRM system won't work for your organization if your staff don't use it. Event organizers have found lower than expected adoption rates among staff, reduced efficiencies, and increased implementation times and costs in general. CRM purpose-built for exhibitions and events automatically, in most instances, includes the fields and functions most commonly used by event organizers, meaning that the system can be configured to suit the unique workflows of an organization rather than having to change your workflows to suit the software. This makes the software more intuitive for end users, leading to less training time, greater adoption rates, increased efficiency, and generally improved customer service. Event organisers find greater ability to track customers, their exhibition goals, their event history without customization, allowing for faster implementation and greater or increased adoption rates. So selecting a CRM system that is part of a larger event management system increases these benefits by offering shared databases, reducing time spent on administration tasks such as data entry and data reconciliation, allowing organizations to spend more time on the activities that positively impact on the bottom line, so making sales and building stronger customer relationships. I will now move on to slide 24. So, who needs CRM? Again, this may sound or seem like an obvious question. But as you can see, there's many different people in an organization, both internal customers and external customers, that actually needs to benefit from CRM. So salespeople, exhibition managers, executives, finance and accounting, conference managers, marketing. So anybody really that has a touch point internally and obviously externally in terms of their customers. So I'm just going to develop some additional information on that. So the exhibitor or sponsor that has invested a good portion of their advertising budget on your exhibition or event has an expectation that they are important to your organization. The right CRM tools provide full customer information across these departments. So certainly your sales team benefits from knowing where customers are in the buying cycle. But they're not the only ones who reap the benefits. Everyone within your organization, and obviously the customers too, will see the benefits when your CRM works in the ways that make the right customer data available to the right users at the right time. For sales and exhibition managers, you need software that has specialized tools that follow the exhibitor cycle, or exhibitor sales cycle, sorry. So across one show or multiple shows. Track exhibitor applications and contracts, offer opportunities to cross-sell and upsell, and aids in the booth or stand assignment process. If you capture the right information, your marketing team can use your CRM platform to create targeted marketing campaigns, for instant targeted email campaigns. And these targeted email campaigns generally are perceived to be 18 times more effective than blanket email blasts. CRM with embedded invoicing with full financials increases the speed and accuracy of billing, increasing productivity dramatically. Finally, complete CRM solutions that offer integrated reporting provide executives or board members with the information they need to make strategic decisions without employees having to stop and run the reports on their behalf. By having exhibition and event business appropriate fields and functions built into your CRM platform, every detail is accessible at any time in the event planning and execution process. Yeah, you mentioned in terms of the questions, there are some additional areas missing in terms of customers, exhibitors, visitors. Hopefully, I included those in my explanation of that slide tomorrow. The list could go on and on in terms of who needs CRM, as I tried to explain. So I've just moved on to slide 25. So workflows and efficiencies. CRM is supposed to streamline processes and allow sales team to focus on selling, cross-selling and upselling, providing excellent customer service and building long-lasting, profitable relationships. So David Tabor, a CRM software expert and author of several business books, says CRM vendors and industry analysts will be more than happy to provide you with wonderful numbers about efficiency and performance gains. Don't get too excited about those numbers because they don't apply to you. He goes on to say, since your business processes, competitive situation, product lines, and sales personnel are different from whatever companies were measured to produce those numbers, the payoffs and interaction of leveraging CRM systems will not be directly comparable. Essentially, what David is saying, it's like comparing apples to oranges. So the reason organizations purchase CRM software is to streamline processes so their sales team can focus less on administration tasks and more on the things that impact on the bottom line. Selling, providing excellent customer service, building long-lasting, profitable relationships. General purpose CRM solutions, not built specifically for the industry, have some specific shortcomings that can negate many of these promised efficiencies. For example, a common complaint is that one-size-fits-all general purpose CRM platforms don't understand the concept of an attendee registration order, which is often far more sophisticated than a product order. A registration order can have one or many attendees associated with it. Each person can register activities, have a guest, have their own attributes and classifications, like a member, non-member, student, and so on, and much more. So when using a general purpose CRM system or third-party registration only provider, in most cases, extensive customization will be needed in order to track, manage, and report on attendee participation year over year. I'm now moving on to slide 26. So the benefits of a single database: save time entering and rekeying, improved inter-department communication, enhance customer experience, and increased accuracy in billing, as I've mentioned in part in some of the slides that we've talked about previously. So when reviewing CRM software choices, an important feature is to consider is the database in terms of both accessibility and data availability. If team members from different departments are able to work from a single database, you'll see several benefits. First, you will see the reduction in the time staff spends on those administration tasks, like rekeying information from one database to another, which causes data entry errors and headaches that come along with them. Secondly, having a single database means each of your staff members is working from the same information in real time. A change made over the phone and entered into the system on the day before an event is instantly accessible, so your event coordinator has the most accurate information on the show floor, and the customer gets what they expect in terms of what they ordered. With a single database, this information is also instantly accessible by your accounting department. So all charges are instantly updated, and you can issue accurate invoices in a timely manner. In terms of efficiencies, that means your team spends less time, not only on the upfront data entry, but also on the manual processes that may have to be in place with separate databases in order to reconcile that data. Finally, the most important aspect is getting the billing of invoices correctly, not only the invoice amount to the bill to name and address, but basic errors can lead to invoice payment delays that ultimately impact on your organization's cash flow efficiencies. I'll now move on to slide 27. So big data versus usable data. So a top 5 trend for CRM software. Big data will turn into customer insight. We expect more organizations to ramp up their efforts to turn big data into business insights, but most organizations don't know where to start. So with the majority of trade show booths or exhibitors and sponsorship sales coming from renewals, building long-lasting relationships through excellent customer service is imperative. So it's not just a matter of gathering information, but being able to pull that data out into ways you and your customers can use it. In order to get a clear picture of each customer, you'll need to be able to track their interactions with your organizations from the initial phone call through to the final invoice with an event or multiple events. Most CRM platforms are not designed to give a 360-degree view of an exhibitor, sponsor, or attendee participation within the framework of shows or events. They're not built to show information by event without costly customizations in many instances. So there is no easy way to compare year-over-year customer preferences from one year to the next, payment information, etc., etc. CRM solutions specifically built for exhibitions and events allow sales teams to access the information they need from one year to the next, including who was signed up to participate and who hasn't renewed yet. An exhibition manager is able to delve more deeply into their customer account information in order to talk to them about what they've done to be successful in the past and where they might need to invest for future success. I will now move on to slide 28. So this slide just gives you an overview really of the importance of information flow. Hopefully I've highlighted some of these importances during the previous slides, but a CRM platform that is built specifically for exhibitions and events and is part of a closed loop system is fundamentally different. Using a central database that is connected to other elements of a show organizer's event business management system allows changes to flow freely from one department to the next in real time. It allows you to create an electronic exhibitor file that accommodates the dynamic and complex nature of shows and events. Booth or stand applications, contracts, payment plans, floor plan placement, booth or stand size, order validations and invoices are all accessible from one single system. If a change is made at any time in the show cycle, it can automatically be updated for every department because the information flows from one central database to each business unit, sales, exhibitions, accounting, all the way to executive reporting. I'm now moving on to slide 29. So this slide really is 5 key takeaways from this webinar. Obviously, I've covered lots of detail around strategic data management, but I obviously just wanted to highlight, if only 5 points you take away from today's webinar, and these are CRM software. So consider implementing an appropriate CRM system, ideally purpose-built for the events or the exhibition industry. Involvement. Involve your key stakeholders in your decisions concerning strategic data management and don't make decisions in isolation. Goals. Set achievable goals around cleaning your data. Maintenance. Make sure you have a regular and ongoing data maintenance plan in place. And finally, one database. So try not to work across multiple databases, as this exaggerates the issues we've highlighted. So look to consolidate into one central managed database where possible. I will now move on to slide 30. So before I take any questions, and I think we're pretty much on track in terms of the time, I just want to give you some background information about USI, or Ungerbuck Systems International, that I obviously represent. So we are a world-leading exhibition and event management software provider. We have over 25 plus years experience of the events industry. So we only provide software for the events industry. We are also a UFI software partner. We have over 40,000 users of our software worldwide. We have 6 offices located throughout the globe. And we operate our software in over 50 countries, and the back office software in 6 languages, 6 core languages. So I'm now going to move on to slide 31, which gives us a short period of time to take any questions that you may have. I believe I've tried to answer some of those questions that were raised during the webinar, both at the time and during my presentation. Okay, so here a question. Using one single database means that all users have access to all information. Is this something that can be problematic? That's a good question. Again, good CRM systems should allow you to allocate users with roles such as CRUD, C-R-U-D, so that's create, read, update, and delete, which in effect will control data entry sufficiently. So based on your role, you have access to view the data that you need to based on your role, whether it's a junior role or an executive role, and also to control what data you can actually enter within that core system. Thank you for that question. Okay, what makes the sales process of events and exhibitions so unique in comparison to traditional sales? So yeah, I think I went over some of this detail in the webinar, but ultimately the cyclical nature of the events, the ability within your core CRM system to actually see the history of that exhibitor, for instance, their preferences, what they ordered last year, what was good, what was bad about the operational delivery, maybe of their booth or their stand. So you can obviously access this information across different systems, so maybe a CRM or SOP system or financial system. But the ability to see that in one core central integrated software solution makes it easier and more efficient for your sales team. And the final question I think I'll take is there any category limitations for viewing data? Again, based on my previous answer around that was raised around use of a single database. Yes, you can, or within Ungerbook and within most good CRM providers, access in terms of viewing data and entering data and maintaining data it has a full access management structure in place. So only those people or users of the software that fit in a certain role within your organization can actually access and update the relevant data to their role, and not maybe some confidential data that you don't want them to access. So again, if you are looking at a CRM system, make sure you have review a CRM system that has a full access management by role capability. Okay, so thank you for those questions. I hope you found this webinar of value, which obviously focused on strategic data management. It's now at the end of the session. Before I wrap up, I would like to say thank you. So if you could move on to slide number 32. I'd like to say thank you. And finally, if you move on to slide 33 as well, I put some contact details for our marketing department, and obviously ungerbook.com, which is our website. Feel free to ask us any further questions using those contact details. If you would like to request a demonstration of Ungerbook software, then please request a demo from our website, ungerbook.com. So I'd like to finally thank you all again, and I'd like to wish you all a great rest of today. Thank you.